Wow, that was loud. Well, hello. This is Ellen Broderick from Inspired Living, and I am interviewing Jules White, or Julie White, who is a wonderful environmental enthusiast and also Ayurvedic um, uh, guide and mentor, I think, for many people. So I asked Jules if she would be willing to have a conversation with me about the things that she has done. I know that the environmental work with your husband, Scott, is that right?
Yep.
Is a really important aspect of your life. So let's start there. And maybe, Jules, you could just tell us a little bit about the business that you and Scott run and how you got into that business in the first place.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny story actually. So the actual business, we're changing direction at the moment. We're going to be working strongly with businesses to help them write their sustainability strategies. Um, but how it started, so Scott was in the consultant sector for about 4 years or so, and a council about 10 years ago phoned me and said, hey, could you help us with introducing a green waste bin to our service? And can you help us do the community engagement and working with the community to accept this new service? I said, sure. So within a couple of weeks, I was still teaching at a specialist science centre, but my house got turned into a call centre. And we answered over 800 complaints. That was our foray into consulting for me with my best friend. And we phoned back over 800 people just to discuss with them about the introduction of the service. So it really highlighted that if you're going to introduce something new, which we already knew, you need to do it in a way that it's they've had a voice, they've heard about it, as opposed to just being told what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the introduction also to the waste sector. I hadn't worked in that area before, so we're writing waste management strategies for councils on how to basically become zero waste. That's the intention of Australia.
Mm-hmm.
It gets very tricky when you're doing that, when you have people people get voted in our council and they want to stay in that role because it's a little power political space that they can manipulate. And they don't want to make some of the really tough decisions to become zero waste because it's not exactly a voting success. So you do this hard work and sometimes it gets watered down quite strong. So but it's been a great journey. And it's just amazing how it just, it was from one phone call that I ended up now working full-time in a consultancy with my husband and my best friend. And it's better than me trying to fix, which I am intending to do, is improve my recycling at home. So I want to be a person that has a jar of waste of a whole year. That's my intention. I'm not at that stage yet. So improving my recycling personally is, doing those type of things for the environment. But if I can work with companies
Mm-hmm.
and businesses to actually help them become sustainable, I feel like that is a stronger calling. And it means I can look at my girls in the eye, my 3 teenagers, and just say, I'm doing something so this place will be left in a better state for you.
Mm. Yeah, I want to go back to something that you said there, Jules. I want to see if I understood it right, and if
Yep.
so, I wanted you to maybe delve a little bit deeper into it, which is this idea that complaints came in by phone calls that you returned, and then you used what people were bringing to you as their discontent, and you then used that as an aspect of what you developed. Is that right?
Yeah. So we learnt from that process. So the information that we got from them, we have then since designed better communication, engagement strategies, and those sorts of things. So we minimize those complaints
Mm-hmm.
and discontent. Um, and it's often, especially in the government sector, I don't know what's like in America or in Australia, decisions get made quickly and then there's not enough time to often have the wisdom come in to get rolled out properly. So initiatives or grants and those sorts of things. And you're often having to write something quite quickly to get back in. So there's not a lot of space or ether, being brought in to digest and then actually work out what's the best course of action. So I don't know, it's interesting where we're going, but the state policy here is called Recycling Victoria. Now, if we're looking for a circular economy and looking into zero waste, recycling is so far down the chain. Why is our policy called Recycling Victoria? Why isn't it called zero waste or circular economy? Like, it's very interesting, the choices they've made in how they communicate and where their thinking is that. This is our policy people making the policies. So, yeah.
I think it's really interesting, Jules, that you you pay attention to all the different aspects. So there's the work that you do, but also the difficulty in having that work itself be sustainable.
Yes.
And
yeah, it's really interesting. And I think having the Ayurveda and the Vedic knowledge, like knowing about the guna, so sattva, rajas, and tamas. A lot of our government's working in rajas or delusion tamas, and being able to be able to see all of that, it helps me understand where people are coming from. I think it's really important when you're working is to I can't even remember the proverb or whatever it is, but just don't judge people before what's happening, because you don't really know what's you don't understand what's actually going on. So clearly the people in policy try and do the best decision, but there's more that can be done.
I think here that proverb has something to do with walk a mile in their shoes. But I want to go back just a little bit there and have you define first, because some of our listeners may not know what Ayurveda is and the various terms like tamas and rajas. Can you give a little bit of an explanation for those things so that everybody who's listening has a sense of what you're talking about?
Sure. So Ayurveda's, the way I describe it is, so it's a sister science to yoga. So people understand yoga, they go to a yoga studio and do postures. And when they're doing the postures, they're doing 1/8 of actually what yoga really is. There's actually 8 limbs to yoga. And yoga is about the science of self-realization. So becoming an enlightened or a realized person. So becoming your true divine self, coming home. And moving beyond the external world to the divinity. So, and Ayurveda is the science of life. And the rishis, or the wise people a few thousand years ago, studied life intently. And they figured out that to be self-realized, there are a few things that need to be humming with vibrancy and joy, which is the body and the mind and the spirit, to be able to have that realization. So they created the science of life. So studying life and working out what is the best for the human body to function as best as it can. And they looked at it through the lens of elements and the characteristics of those elements. So they have, sorry, I've got a cat in the background kicking around and trying to get my attention. So with the Ayurveda, you learn, it reminds me of the, at Delphi, that plaque across is know thyself. If you know yourself, then you can get the best out of yourself. You can be the best for the people who you are in your life and who you want to be of service to. So then it comes out, so using the elements, you come out with 3 different types that you can work with. So the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and they're called doshas. And when you're, so the other really 2 other key things with Ayurveda, when you're born, I love this, when you were conceived, the 9 months that you're in your mum's womb, and then the moment that you were born, all that creates your constitution. So you get a bit about mum and dad, you get a bit from when you're in the womb, and And when you're alive, when you're born, when the planets and the astrology and how the world was locks in and creates your perfect constitution, and there's no one on the planet that's like you, which is another beautiful thing about Ayurveda. And then as you go through life, you get what you eat, how you exercise, how you sleep, who you hang out with. As you go through your childhood, adulthood, teenagers, and those sorts of things, the influences, where you live, how you live, who you live with, will either bring you into balance or out of balance. And I think that's the dance. You got the seasons as well. And if you're a female, your menstruation. For men, they do have a cyclic nature. I don't know it intimately, but your challenge, if you choose to accept it, is to dance with that and to be into balance.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love the way you explain that. And it also, you and I do very similar work, but different as well. I mean, we both feel as though the habits that you take on in life on a daily basis are going to really determine what your life looks like as it unfolds. And we guide people into their more optimal health using that framework. But and I would explain it in a way that comes across, slightly different. But I love you and I have worked together now for a couple of years, just in sharing ideas and whatnot. And I love the way you explain things in it's a very familiar and also intimate way of speaking, and I really enjoy that. And that is a little bit like, perhaps the very individual nature that each person carries.
Yes.
Yeah, and also the fact that this work is going on in all over the world, that you're on, the other side of the world, and very passionate about this work. So I really appreciate that. I know we don't have too much time today, so I did want to delve into a couple of other things that that I know are interests of yours. And but first, let me say your business is Living Wisely for the habits. And what is your business for the environmental evolution? Is there, what's the name of your business? Just because listeners may want to get in touch with you. And
yeah, no, it's Environmental Evolution is the name of the environmental consultancy. We're in the process. We don't have a website or Facebook page. It's been purely based on reputation for the last 10, 15 years and people get in contact with us. So, but we're in the process of getting that up. So it's a little aside.
How would people get in touch with you if they wanted to?
Best would be to email me at julie@environmentalevolution.com.au for the environmental at work.
And for anything else, like if they were interested in the 10 habits?
Yeah, so probably julie@livingwisely.com.au. Probably the email would be the quickest and the best. Within the next week or so, it'll be environmentalevolution.com.au for the website and livingwisely.com.au for the website for there. But yeah, just probably the emails would be the best.
Okay, great. Can you tell me a little bit about how you expanded out of the environmental evolution to then include in your life as part of your vocation, the Living Wisely?
One late night in one of my bad habits prior to who I am now, where I don't spend late nights anymore. I must have been looking at Ayurveda. I've been practicing it on and off personally in my life, and I came across a video of Kate's.
And this is Kate Stillman.
Kate Stillman,
who is Body Thrive and has written books and pamphlets and leads people to be trainers, right?
Yes.
So that's the one you're talking about, Kate.
Yeah. So our goddess Kate Stillman. And for whatever reason, I signed up for a call I don't normally do this. I find it very uncomfortable talking to other people who I don't know, but I was drawn to the work, and I had the confidence, and I had a chat with Grace, and she said, you would be brilliant at Living Ayurveda course, and we'll throw in Body Thrive as well. And that was the start of the journey of me discovering the 10 habits and the system that Kate has discovered and how to work with people. And I guess for me, I was struggling. I wasn't sleeping well. I would say that there was an element of depression or mental health. And so I was the functioning person. So I could go out, I could take the kids to school, I'd do those sorts of things, but I was not happy inside. I wasn't completely broken, but there was chinks in the armor. And so, but it wasn't a smooth journey. At one point, my daughter had to have surgery, and it was really intense. So I leaned away from the habits and pulled out and put everything on pause. And then I came back in, and it was a struggle to sort of be on top of the content and keep learning and those sorts of things. So then I pulled out again. But then my daughter, one of my other daughters, came off a horse a few years ago and she had post-concussive syndrome, and she didn't go back to school for the rest of the year. So she pretty much missed year 10. And this is a kid who, she's read something once and she got it straight away. So she had to relearn how she was going to learn. She was talking about the other day, actually. And when that happened, I leaned into the habits. And that's when it transformed for me how powerful they are in enabling you to, it's basically a base for life. You can jump from and deal with life in any way. It gives you, I was just reading a book, The Gap and the Gain, and it talks about being bulletproof in your resilience. And I think that's what the habits do. It creates the vitality so you can deal with what you've got to deal with. Because of that, I thought this is just too good. And there's often flavors through your life. And for me, teaching has been a flavor. So I've been actually a physical secondary and primary school teacher. I've been a facilitator for over 20 years. And so that's my flavor, and the content changes. So it's either in the environment or it's in the education system, and now it's within the health and well-being, which is something I'm really passionate about. So yeah.
Well, I think that's so, something to highlight is that your own journey through doing and not doing and doing and not doing is, it's actually not untypical of people who are wanting to try something out and then maybe not feeling so committed, or having life happen in such a way that it throws them off balance and then coming back in. It seems to me that would make you a particularly compassionate and understanding person of people who are, it's usually not a very straight line to approach and engage and benefit from these habits.
Definitely. And I think having that experience within my crew, so we've got people in Living Wisely, and we're actually meeting in 10 minutes, which is fine. We've still got about another 5 minutes to go. I think they're all recovering perfectionists, which is and it's constantly saying to them, you don't have to get it perfect. And this is not just in the habits, but in life. Have a go. And it's something I'm still, it feels like a bitter pill, is the failing. So first attempts in learning, and I keep reminding myself that you have to be out there. You have to be having a go. If you're not having a go, to fail.
Fail being the is it an the acronym for?
Yes, first attempt in failing or learning. Yeah.
So the first letter of each of those words it comes out to fail, and so it's a different perspective of looking at failure. It's not as oh, I'm bad or this is terrible, but it's on the process, on the road. You're learning more deeply, and it's that foundation. It's like a child who stumbles when they're learning to walk. It's part of the process.
And I still struggle. I mean, you appreciate I came with a something that was untroubling for me about a month ago, and listening to you and Michelle and having a conversation about it really helps me put the wisdom back in, as opposed to the turmoil that you can feel.
And let me just explain that Michelle and Jules and another woman, Rami, and I, we are supports for one another, and we meet regularly because we do similar work in different parts of the world, and
Yeah.
share that and support each other and help to reflect to each other also what we see, because we don't see ourselves always, or we never see ourselves completely the way other people see us, and it really
Right.
helps to get those perspectives. So and that's what these groups of people that you lead through, and that I lead through these year-long journeys, have that opportunity also to hear and see reflected through other eyes something about themselves that they would miss otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the bonus of the work that we do. It's not something that I thought would happen, but in a couple of years I have to come over to America. and
Yes.
and it'll take a year off. I hope Scott's keen to do that, because we'll just go hiking and cycling and kayaking in the morning. I can't wait to do
Yes.
that with you.
Yes.
But there's just so many beautiful souls that I've connected with that I would never have,
Yeah.
and deeply too, like really, really deeply. It's just been it's a gift that I wasn't expecting.
I feel the same way. And just before we leave, you touched on being out in nature. If you come here, you'd like to be doing these things.
Oh,
Can you
yeah.
just spend a minute or two telling me about your connection to nature and how you lead people through experiences of, I believe it's called forest bathing?
Yeah, so I would attribute it to my stepfather, who passed away when I was 18, but had a massive influence, and he loved nature and the bush. So we would go out, we'd paint it, we'd draw it, we'd walk in it, we'd swim in it, we'd do a whole lot of stuff. So camp, and I think it's part of my healing, my processing. So I do long distance hikes.
Mm.
So I've got a group of people who we go hiking with regularly, every weekend or every fortnight. But one of the things I came across recently is the forest bathing. So you actually intentionally go out, and you're not speeding through the bush to get distance or kilometers done. You're actually going through the senses, and then there's particular questions you can ask yourself, and you don't use nature, you tune in.
Mm.
And I don't know if, depending on where people are at, if you go into the bush, the stillness that is present underneath the noise and the wind and the birds and what's happening, there is just this most beautiful stillness that you can tap into, and then create stillness, and just cleanses turmoil, tension, and anything like that. So
I think it was the poet John O'Donohue who said, it's in the silence that we know God.
yeah,
Or,
yes,
for other people for whom the word God may not resonate, the divine, or that which unites everyone. And that's a beautiful thing. Well, we have just less than a minute, Jules, and I just wondered if there's anything that I've so enjoyed this time with you. I always do. And just any final thoughts or words to share with our audience.
um I don't have any. Other than if you want to hang out with Ellen, she is the most amazing, beautiful, articulate woman I've ever come across. And I
Oh,
was so excited to be having this conversation with you, and
oh.
to again be in your presence and just enjoy your company. So
It's been a complete pleasure, Jules. There's the idea of you see in other people, you more fully see yourself. And this has been a delight to have this conversation with you. I hope we can do it again at some point. And this is
definitely part two.
so yes, Jules is coming from, it's the Victoria part of Australia, right? The region is
Correct.
Victoria.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from Plymouth, New Hampshire, central New Hampshire in the United States. And I love that we can reach across this distance, and my soul, can touch your soul for
I
a
know.
period of moments and delight in that. Thank you so
Yep.
much.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks, Ellen.
Thanks, Jules.